Hello and welcome to Fidelity Connects. I'm Glenn Davidson. The average age Canadians are retiring has increased dramatically the last 15 years. Combine that with individuals living longer, cost of living on the rise, and ongoing market changes, there are several factors influencing the retirement landscape. Today, our team of experts at Fidelity will dive into the trends, insights, and concerns of Canadians from the newly released Fidelity Retirement Report. Incredibly, this is the 20th edition. So let's introduce the team behind the paper, Vice President of Tax and Retirement Research, Peter Bowen, and Directors of Tax and Retirement Research, Michelle Munro and Jacqueline Power. Wonderful to be here with the three of you.
Great to be here. Thanks,
morning,
Glenn.
Thank you.
Now, Peter, maybe I'll start with you. Please tell us about the 2025 Fidelity Retirement Report.
Yes, Glenn, we're delighted to release this. We've been doing this since 2005, so it's our 20th edition. It looks like this, but I'm showing the 2024 report because the 2025 report is so hot off the presses, it's actually still at the printers. So, but it is available, of course, on our website. And for the survey, we survey 2,000 Canadians coast to coast who are at least 45 years of age. And what this allows us to do is compare and contrast the perceptions of retirement across retirees versus pre-retirees, men versus women, region to region, and especially important this year, across time. So we can look at 2 decades of changes to retirement thinking of Canadians.
Wonderful. Michelle, I'll turn to you. Could you tell us how retirement has changed over the last 20 years?
Well, 20 years is a long time, Glenn. And what I think what's really happening is we're rewriting that retirement playbook, if you will. So some of the key factors that we're seeing, that we're changing in the retirement landscape for Canadians as they plan for retirement and also living in retirement. So we're looking at some of the financial challenges. 84% of respondents said that retirement is getting more financially challenging than it was 20 years ago. And part of that is because of cost of living, longer life expectancies, also that retirement lifestyle is a little bit more nicer, if you will. 85% said that they are more going to be doing a transition, a phased-in approach to retirement. It's no longer that hard stop of the working years and the hard start of the retirement years. And then the third piece is looking at, people are thinking overall that 88% said that it's more complex retirement planning than it was 20 years ago. And they're looking for a more unique retirement plan to their own lifestyle expectations and what have you. All of that to say, retirement over the last 20 years has gotten more complex and more challenging.
Jacqueline, interesting to hear that people are viewing it as a more complex and challenging environment. How much do Canadians feel they need to save for retirement now?
Yeah, so the great thing with us having done this report for so long is that we have a lot of data that we can actually pull back on and have a look. So we went right back to 2005, and essentially pre-retirees at that point said that they needed $447,000. So fast forward to 2025, they're saying they need $1,020,000 in order to retire. So we were trying to figure out, okay, is this cost of living increase? Looked at what inflation was doing. It was only 2.2% annualized over that period of time. So essentially, pre-retirees are feeling that they need almost double the amount of what that inflation was, so 4.2%. So then we took a step back and tried to figure out, okay, what's changed? Like everybody's an individual, but what's changed over the past 20 years? And one thing that we thought about was that it could be travel. Maybe, after the pandemic, we were locked down for 2 years. So I think a lot of people are looking to travel and want to, experience the world and that sort of thing. So that's one area that it's, that's had an effect. Another thing to look at as well is housing. Whether you're purchasing a house, whether you're renting a house, that's a lot more expensive these days. So as a result, what we found was 69% of respondents said that they were more likely to have to support their adult children during retirement than individuals who retired 20 years ago. So that's a huge difference right there. And then finally, we looked at stats as far as individuals who were born outside of Canada. Does this have any effect? And what we found was 59% of individuals who were not born here, they're finding that there are barriers to retirement because of the fact that they're supporting family. And when you look at that in comparison to Canadians, for like people who were born in Canada, pardon me, it's at 31%. So huge difference as far as those two are concerned.
Interesting you mentioned travel. I think people have sticker shock when they decide, let's book a trip. And depending on where the Canadian currency is as well, but that certainly factors into what they're expecting for the future, doesn't it?
Oh, very much
Very
so.
interesting.
Yeah.
Peter, let's talk about retirement age. Where's it at and where does it seem to be trending towards?
Yes, Glenn, this is an area I've particular interest in, perhaps because I'm getting close to retirement, and you, of course, are already retired. And Canadians back in the 70s, mid-70s, they retired at the age of 65. And the most recent data from Statistics Canada, 65.3. So it hasn't changed, except it has. Looking at the endpoints masks a lot of change. In fact, there was a significant decline in the average age of retirement till about the turn of the century, got down to about 61. Bumped along there a little while, and then when we look at 20 years ago, our first edition of this report back in 2005, at that time it was about 61. And since then, it has gone up to 65. That's actually a fairly dramatic change and really didn't take off until 2008, 2009, which of course was when the financial crisis happened. Now, there were other factors as well. You even mentioned some of the people are living longer, but we do think that caused a change in the curve. So, and one question is, will this continue? So, in fact, in our survey, we have been asking pre-retirees about when they intend to retire. And we find a similarly dramatic change. In fact, we've got a slide on this. So if we can bring up that first slide, take a look at the answers to our question about when do pre-retirees intend to retire. And look at the numbers 2005 versus 2025. Back now, in fact, only 26% of pre-retirees intend to retire before 65 versus 58%. And we've got this dark blue bar on the slide as well. The answer being, I do not intend to retire. 16% of our respondents said they do not intend to retire at all. We didn't even ask that question back in 2005 because we didn't think anyone would say that back then. Now, a lot of people are saying it. So that does suggest that the average age of retirement is not likely to decline. And in fact, we think it may well continue to increase over time.
Does that shock you when you look at the difference in the numbers over the last few years?
I don't know about shock, but
it's a reality check.
It's a reality check. In terms of advisors working with their clients, it's like, hey, when do you think you're going to retire is a common question to be asking clients in terms of financial planning. And we've got to recognize the reality that a lot of people are working a lot later than they used to.
It's an interesting challenge to an investor's or to a potential retiree's psyche as well, if they're planning to retire at an earlier age and then something changes and they say, now I've got to stretch this out even longer. It sort of takes me to another question for you, which is about the fact that people aren't necessarily coming away from their core career. They're actually transitioning and continuing to work in some shape or form through part of or all of their retirement.
And Michelle mentioned this about it becoming more of a transition rather than a hard stop, hard start. We are seeing a lot more of that. You're witness to this.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So why are people doing this, right? And so we asked, and the answers, there's actually a combination of reasons. And I should note, before I dive into the details, people could select more than one reason. But about half said they needed the money to keep up with the rising cost of living. So that's not a great answer. That's some that suggests that they need the money, therefore they have to work in retirement. And we've looked at studies over the years about the benefits of working in retirement, and they are plentiful, but they're only there if you're working because you choose to work, not because you have to work. And but back to that, the most common reason, in fact, selected was that they wanted the extra money to do more fun stuff. So you mentioned travel, right? So that extra cash. So maybe I take a longer vacation to Europe or whatever the case might be. That costs money. Hey, I'm doing some part-time work, bringing in a little cash towards that. Other reasons mentioned, to support others, right? Whether that's parents or children, more commonly. People, even if they don't need the money, they like the security of the extra cash. And then Glenn, one reason that we didn't actually allow as an answer, but you told me, is your spouse wants you out of the house. Glenn didn't actually tell me that, but
Well, that could be partially true.
yes, so there's lots of reasons why people continue to work in retirement, whether it's part-time or just some different gig.
Yeah.
And as long as that's a choice, again, it's actually a good thing.
It is a fear I hear from people who are asking me as they're thinking about retirement, and they're thinking, I don't know if I have anything to do. And that's important. Mental stimulation is important. Social contact is important. Just having a reason to be. And I think that's something that's a challenge for people as they talk to their financial advisors. But if they have the time, they might figure it all out. Let's go to you, Michelle. Canadians supporting their adult children. You'd mentioned that earlier. That seems to be something very, very important and top of mind with people.
Right. So, and this is also, all these pieces, they all are overlap and they're integrated together, because Peter mentioned, well, people are working more in retirement for supporting loved ones. And that's also a growing trend, that retirement is less about just the individual and supporting one's own self during the retirement years, but also supporting their loved ones. So the last couple of years, we've been focusing on non-student adult children, because I think it's sort of normalized, or it's not abnormal to be supporting an adult child while they're in their post-secondary studies. So once they've sort of launched more. So what we found is that 63% of retirees said that they have supported their non-student adult children. And that's a pretty high percentage. So we wanted to look down and like, well, what are they supporting them doing? So some of the things didn't really shock me, like the big ticket items, the down payment for the home, the big tickets of the wedding, maybe a car, those lifestyle things. But almost a third, let me look this, 30% of retirees said that they helped their non-student adult children with day-to-day living expenses, which that was like, anyway, that was just the wow. And retirees, they typically have a fixed nest egg, right? So thinking about this, well, if we're supporting our adult children, what does this mean to our own retirements? And then for the pre-retirees, well, they still have time on their side, right? So incorporating that into their plan. And interestingly, the proportion of pre-retirees who said, I expect to be supporting my non-student adult children is significantly lower than the retirees who actually are. So there's a gap there. So incorporating that all into their plan. And, you want to be prepared that the bank of mom and dad might still be open even in retirement.
Yeah, but the hours are getting shorter. So day-to-day expenses.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. Actually, why don't we talk about how much people want to transfer down financially? Because that's connected to what you were talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so we actually have a slide here. So let's pull this up. We have a chart. And we're looking at retirees. So this is slide number 2. Okay, we asked retirees, how much do you expect to leave to the next generation? So in the blue bars, this is what we expect. And it sort of ranges from across the country. BC was the highest. $1,350,000. And then Ontario was the next highest. Atlantic was at the bottom, $250,000. And that's a lot of money. This is a lot of money. But maybe I shouldn't add my own personal color there.
But you just did. Carry on.
All right. Back on the chart still, we also layered on the housing prices across the country. British Columbia, Vancouver more specifically, Ontario, again, Toronto more specifically. Well, higher housing prices there. And you can see the correlation here is pretty obvious, I think. And those housing prices, how much one would expect to leave to the next generation makes a big difference. So it has a big impact. And, for our audience and our clients thinking, well, that's a lot of one's assets to be in one single asset. And so the importance of diversification, looking at equities, fixed income, other asset classes, what have you, and help mitigating that risk for our clients. As an aside, Peter, Jacqueline, and I, we crisscross the country. We meet with advisors and their clients for investor seminars. The most popular seminar is really estate planning. And these discussions, and there's a lot of, I would say, misinformation, sort of half-truths out there. So there's a real opportunity for advisors to be connecting with their clients and their prospects as they're growing their business and really helping them, give them that peace of mind, that security over their estate plan. And financial plan should include an estate plan as well.
Absolutely. Does that tie in with a lot of the emerging things that you're seeing, Jacqueline?
It does, most definitely. So essentially what we're finding is that Canadians want to have some sort of a legacy that they're able to provide to their children, grandchildren, whomever they choose. So essentially StatsCan in 2023 decided to look to see what are Canadians' net worth, what are we looking at as far as that's concerned. And it's finding about, it varies depending on region, but it's about $740,000. So then individuals are saying, okay, about 57% of Canadians want to start to pass that on. Some are interested in passing that on during their lifetime. And that's something that if they do want to do that, they definitely need to plan for that and make sure they're working with their advisor. The thing that's really scary is that about 50% of them, or even less than that, are actually having those conversations. And what's even scarier is that they're not having the conversations with the children or with their advisor. And the advisor is the one who has to be involved with all of this to make sure that the planning is done correctly. So lots of planning that needs to be done for sure.
Talk more about that. Sorry, Michelle.
I was going to say it's a great opportunity for the advisor to really connect and normalize these types of conversations where people are uncomfortable.
Yep, very much so. And it's tough conversations to have, right? Anytime we have like our estate planning presentations, it's hard to have those conversations. It's hard to open that door initially, right? None of us want to talk about our passing, right? And how we're going to divvy up our estate and that sort of thing. But these are conversations that it's better if they're had sooner rather than later.
And you've been talking with advisors for a long time in your career.
Very
Can you
much
talk
so.
about more related to the value of advice?
Oh, very much so. So this is an area that is so challenging for so many Canadians. Being able to, how can we make this determination as far as, how much do we need to save? How do we move forward? How do we have the retirement that we want? And some Canadians are trying to do this on their own. And it is very clear that it is showing that the value of advice is so important. And I think we have a slide that's sort of showing if somebody has a plan versus somebody not having a plan. And the difference that's in place here, we can see, the top blue line is showing individuals who have a plan. And it's very much showing that, 90% of them are feeling much more prepared. They're feeling much more confident as far as their retirement is concerned. Whereas if we look at the bottom green line, these are individuals who do not have a plan in place. And it's so important, not only do you want, the first step is to make sure that you're working with a financial advisor, but then the next step is having that financial plan, that actual written plan in place. Because essentially what happens then is we have something that we're following, right? We know how much we need to be saving every month. We know how to reach that goal that we're trying to get to. So it's so important, and I can't say enough about that.
Perfect, thank you. Not only are we doing this meeting today electronically, but people are working at home through Zoom and other means. Has that been a factor in prolonging how long people want to work? Because they've cut out that commute. And if you live in those expensive provinces in particular that you were just showing, the commute's not great. And so has this added longevity, do you think, to people's working career?
Absolutely. We do think it has. The ability to work from home, saving that commute, sleep in a bit more, you can be a bit more relaxed. You can do it, people work from the cottage sometimes, right? So a better work-life balance can result. And we do think that is extending this. I think the commute is the number one thing, but it just can be a more relaxed way to work for many people as well, meaning less stress, meaning, hey, I will keep working.
Many people are single. Did the study factor them in?
Single. Oh, why are you asking me this question?
You're right here.
So we did look at, I'm trying to think, I'm looking to my partners here, thinking about what did we see about, I was focused on more about women and men.
Yeah.
Can we flip it that way? I'm going to change the question.
That's what the question says, actually, gender specific.
So looking at thinking about retirement planning and the outlook on retirement, Jacqueline was showing that in general, there's a decline in those having an outlook, just a general outlook on positivity on retirement. And so as we're seeing that, and we looked a little bit deeper between pre-retirees and retirees were they dropped a little bit, but where we saw was driving the decline in positive answers are in the pre-retiree group. And then we split the pre-retirees between women and men were more likely to say more positive, and women were less likely to have a positive response. So with that, I think that rolling back is that women were harder hit during the pandemic. They were in work-type career jobs that were more service-oriented, and the service industry was harder hit, took on a disproportionate responsibilities around the home. So it takes a long time, even though we've recovered from the pandemic by and large, but it takes a long time for those emotional aspects to really catch up. So also with that is that we saw that women have when I plan to retire, they're more likely to be saying, 65 or later. There's an increase in that group.
With traditional thinking.
Yeah, with traditional thinking. So I found those insights really
that is interesting.
important.
Peter?
And when we look at the fact that Canadians are living longer, well, women live longer than men. Sorry, Glenn, but that's our
Statistically.
burden.
Statistically.
So there are more single females for sure in retirement, and that brings its own challenges to the table, of course.
Jacqueline, I'll ask you about the $1 million that investors are saying that they need to save. Is that including the house, or is that on top of real estate?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm guessing it's on top of real estate because they would be your actual investable assets.
Yeah.
So most definitely.
Makes sense.
Jacqueline was also talking about the importance of having a financial plan, feeling better prepared financially. One of the key insights that we've had is that, those who have a written financial plan, not even feel better financially, but also physically, socially, mentally, emotionally. So that's 4 pillars of well-being that comes from having a written financial plan. And the percentage of those who have a written financial plan and work with a financial advisor really goes through the roof. All of that to say, I know the industry is moving towards that goals-based approach. Having that written financial plan, it really has a big impact on the well-being of our clients.
Thank you. Peter, Jacqueline, Michelle, so wonderful to be here in the studio with you today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Fidelity Connects podcast. Now, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Fidelity Connects on your podcast platform of choice. And if you like what you're hearing, leave a review or a 5-star rating. Fidelity mutual funds and ETFs are available by working with a financial advisor or through an online brokerage account. Visit fidelity.ca/howtobuy for more information. On fidelity.ca, you can also find more information on future live webcasts. And don't forget to follow Fidelity Canada on X. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Fidelity Investments Canada ULC or its affiliates. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. It is not an offer to sell or buy, or an endorsement, recommendation, or sponsorship of any entity or security cited. Read a fund's prospectus before investing. Funds are not guaranteed. Their values change frequently, and past performance may not be repeated. Fees, expenses, and commissions are all associated with fund investments. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.